Zohran Kwame Mamdani, in his first speech as New York City's 112th mayor, vowed that he will govern as he was elected, as a democratic socialist.
City Hall will deliver an agenda of safety, affordability, and abundance, where government looks and lives like the people it represents, never flinches in the fight against corporate greed, and refuses to cower before challenges that others have deemed too complicated. We will govern without shame and insecurity, making no apology for what we believe. I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist. I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed radical. As the great senator from Vermont once said, "What's radical is a system which gives so much to so few and denies so many people the basic necessities of life." We will strive each day to ensure that no New Yorker is priced out of any one of those basic necessities.
That's the promise that the mayor of New York City made to every New Yorker and every non-New Yorker watching his inaugural address on today. Mayor Mamdani's focus on safety, affordability, and abundance was echoed by Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
In Zohran Mamdani, we have chosen a mayor who is relentlessly dedicated to making life not just possible, but aspirational for working people. New York City has chosen the ambitious pursuit of universal child care, affordable rent and housing, and clean and dignified public transit for all. And we have chosen that over the distractions of bigotry and the barbarism of extreme income inequality. We have chosen this path because we know that it's the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, and that if we can make it here, we can make it anywhere.
So who does New York City belong to? If you ask the new mayor, the city now collectively belongs to the 8.5 million people who make New York City their home, including those who feel like their party establishment failed them, and even those who voted for Donald Trump. And then Mayor Mamdani made this promise.
We will govern expansively and audaciously. We may not always succeed, but never will we be accused of lacking the courage to try. To those who insist that the era of big government is over, hear me when I say this. No longer will City Hall hesitate to use its power to improve New Yorkers' lives.
It is a message that one United States senator hopes resonates with the rest of the country. Senator Bernie Sanders publicly swore Zohran Mamdani in yesterday after thanking America's largest city for electing him.
New York, thank you for inspiring our nation. Thank you for giving us, from coast to coast, the hope and the vision that we can create government that works for all, not just the wealthy and the few. At a moment when people in America, and in fact throughout the world, are losing faith in democracy, over 90,000 of you in this city volunteered for Zohran's campaign. You knocked on doors. You shared your dreams and your hopes for the future of this city. And in the process, you took on the Democratic establishment, the Republican establishment, the President of the United States, and some enormously wealthy oligarchs. And you defeated them in the biggest political upset in modern American history.
Zohran Mamdani started his first full day in office this morning, commuting the way millions of New Yorkers do, riding the subway. Today, Mayor Mamdani signed an executive order to create the Office of Mass Engagement, bringing grassroots-style organizing to City Hall. Yesterday, Mayor Mamdani signed 3 executive orders to address the housing crisis, including one to reestablish the Office to Protect Tenants. On his second day in office, Mamdani is moving to translate some of his campaign promises into actual policy. But it's a process that began weeks ago when the former Federal Trade Commission chair, Lina Khan, joined Mamdani's team. The New York Times reports that Lina Khan, quote, has spent weeks scouring New York City's laws to find dormant or underused mayoral authority that could allow Mr. Mamdani to take action in a hurry. The exact proposals have been kept under wraps, but 3 people familiar with the discussions said they include specific attempts to drive down apartment rental fees and utility costs and compel businesses to be more transparent about pricing. Other suggestions include dusting off a little-used 1960s price gouging statute and policing new protections for food delivery workers. Joining us now is Robert Reich. He served as the Secretary of Labor under President Bill Clinton. He's a professor of public policy at UC Berkeley and a co-founder of Inequality Media. Professor Reich, great to see you again. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Good to see you, Ali, and Happy New Year.
And to you, sir. Zohran Mamdani talks a big game, but in the end, governing a major city and dealing with prices is complicated. I want to read a little more from Semaphore about Lina Khan and her playbook for Mamdani. It's a similar playbook to what she did when she was in the Federal Trade Commission under Biden. The playbook is one Khan ran at the FTC, where she made use of forgotten laws in pursuit of Biden's progressive agenda. One of her first moves was reviving a practice essentially abandoned in the 1970s of formally putting companies on notice that the agency thought they might be breaking the law. These notices of penalty offense, the antitrust equivalent of a warning to tread carefully, had been issued by the agency just once since 1999, before Khan took control of the agency in 2021. She sent thousands of them, warning Uber and Lyft against promising money-making opportunities they couldn't deliver, Applebee's and Hertz against airing ads that misrepresented their customer experiences, and vitamin manufacturers against making unsubstantiated health claims, end quote. I give this to you, Professor, because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the Mamdani campaign talk stops and action starts.
Absolutely. Lina Khan did a fabulous job at the Federal Trade Commission, and I'm so pleased that she's there to help Mamdani at this particular juncture. But it's also going to require, and I think that laws and finding laws and telling the companies exactly what they are expected to do is all very, very important. I don't mean to minimize the importance of all of that, but fundamentally it comes down to whether the people of New York are going to push their governor and their representatives and even Mamdani himself to actually make these changes. In other words, it's up to the grassroots. And as you may know historically, Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1936, when he ran for re-election and he had all these great ideas, and some woman came up to him and said, Mr. President, I really want to support you and I want you to do all those things. And he said to her, I will do them if you make me. I think that's a significant point. It's all about making these politicians really do what they are promised to do.
And that's the agency we saw in the November elections, in the October No Kings rally, and that we hope to see this year in midterm elections. That people, I was just talking to Tim Snyder, who said, you know, if you give them the power, they'll take the power. If you tell them what to do, they'll have to listen. One of the things that Mamdani ran on was raising taxes. At yesterday's press conference, he was asked, because people were in the crowd were chanting, "Tax the rich." Here's what he had to say about it.
The 2 most straightforward ways to raise revenue, to not only take on the fiscal challenges that we are inheriting, but also to fulfill the affordability agenda that we have been running on, is by raising taxes on the 1% of New Yorkers who make $1 million a year, by an additional 2%, and by raising the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey. And in this, we would raise $9 billion. And we put this forward because it is critical in a moment like this to not allow fiscal challenges to become an excuse for austerity.
That last sentence is important as we put this forward, because it's critical in a moment like this not to allow fiscal challenges to become an excuse for austerity, because that's what we've been going through, right? When the Trump administration came in, they came in with Doge. They said we can't afford this stuff, and they cut billions of dollars out of the federal budget. They claim it's trillions. But that's the point, right? They created an emergency to suggest that people on benefits have to be cut because we don't have the money for it.
Exactly. And this is this is the playbook. This has been the playbook. Ellie, you remember, I mean, since Bill Clinton was in the White House, you basically create the pressure, a budgetary pressure, so that Democrats, when they actually win, when they have authority to do something, feel that they cannot possibly do it because the pressure of austerity is simply too great. And I think it's very important that Mamdani made that point exactly as he did.